Welcome to a new video series from WDWNT.com, Timekeeping. This show will attempt to chronicle year-by-year changes to the Walt Disney World Resort, from exciting new ride openings to the minutia of a store changing names. Join us as we count down to the 50th anniversary of the vacation kingdom of the world, Walt Disney's last great dream. The story of Walt Disney World doesn't begin with its opening on October 1st, 1971. In fact, it's arguable as to when that story begins. But for our sake, we'll say it truly began in 1959. That June, Walt Disney met with executives from NBC to develop a project in the New York City area, as well as move his show from ABC to NBC. By this time, Walt had already encountered problems with the amount of land and control he had in Anaheim, California, which led him to passing on the New York project. This wasn't the end of the discussions, however. Talks continued between Disney and RCA, an NBC subsidiary, about land in Palm Beach, Florida. Walt commissioned several feasibility studies on Florida, including a survey of 12,000 acres of land owned by billionaire John D. MacArthur. These talks also broke down when MacArthur only wanted to sell a few hundred acres of land, not enough to include a community of tomorrow that Walt was already envisioning. Of course, there wouldn't be a Walt Disney World without Disneyland. The park opened on July 17, 1955, and by 1959, it was a massive hit, already undergoing its first major expansion with the addition of the Matterhorn bobsleds, the monorail, and the submarine voyage. To Walt, though, there were many problems. First was the lack of land. There was little room for expansion, and third-party motels and attractions now littered the area around the park. The related second matter was control. While Disney could flex its influence in Anaheim, he couldn't control what was around his property. And while these were deciding factors in choosing Central Florida, there were still a few other locations seriously considered as an East Coast attraction. These were centered around more established areas. In 1963, Walt was considering a site in Niagara Falls, the smallest of the proposed locations. Also in 1963, a site in St. Louis that would have been part of the same complex of the Gateway Arch was considered. This would have been a 5-story indoor park. Also in Missouri, Walt had considered purchasing and updating his old family farm in Marceline. And the NBC project actually began as a discussion of a New York area project. Funny enough, Walt even toyed with buying an existing Disneyland ripoff park in the Bronx, New York, called Freedomland, which was founded by some former employees of his who had felt wronged. Central Florida ended up being the only site that provided the amount of land that Walt really wanted, but acquiring it without significantly driving up prices would lead to the kind of operation people write spy novels about. In fact, two of the principal participants in his plan, Paul Helliwell and William Donovan, were former members of the Office of Strategic Services, the predecessor of the CIA. Using fake names, a series of law firms, and even convincing the Orlando Sentinel's publisher that the anonymity of the mysterious buyer was good for Central Florida, Disney was able to keep their involvement under wraps until most of the land had been purchased. Disney managed to purchase the main tracts of land using option agreements in the name of attorney trustees. There were even negotiations for oil and mineral rights with Tufts University in Massachusetts. Though it was often named the mysterious buyer, Disney managed to shake off rumors for a while. The proximity to the ever-expanding operations at NASA pointed to several aerospace companies as the most likely buyers. By 1965, Disney had procured 27,000 acres for under $200 an acre in the names of dummy corporations such as I-4 Corporation, Bay Lake Properties Incorporated, Latin American Development, Reedy Creek Ranch Incorporated, and Tomahawk Properties Incorporated. You can see these names listed above Crystal Arts on Main Street, USA, in a tribute to Don Tatum, who played a key role in the land purchases. That same land jumped to nearly $80,000 an acre after the project was announced. Even with the land acquired, Disney still had to figure out how it would govern the project. On June 14, 1965, a 4-day meeting commenced to decide upon the legalities needed to fulfill their goals. This included discussions on drainage, zoning, building codes, and taxation. The team, which Walt only attended for the opening and closing, focused on 2 types of legal structure: a municipality or special district. Special districts in Florida allow for more specific control of building codes and drainage of the wetlands needed to build the project. In the end, they decided on a combination: the cities of Bay Lake and Lake Buena Vista and the Reedy Creek Drainage District, now the Reedy Creek Improvement District. Disney now had the power to build its own utilities, court system, police force, and airport, in addition to the construction-related powers it wanted. The state legislature approved the entities, and they were officially formed on May 12, 1967. However, this wasn't the end of the story. In a lawsuit that was almost a comedy sketch, the district sued the state of Florida and Disney challenging itself. This was to preempt any other court challenge and to get the Florida Supreme Court to uphold the legality of the district. The state had to legally oppose the suit, but in reality, the attorneys for the state helped to make Disney's case. And when asked if they had a rebuttal for the district's case, the attorney arguing for the state responded, quote, "Yes, sir, but I don't know what to say." Suffice it to say, the district won the case. On October 1st, 1965, Paul Helliwell announced that his mystery client would be identifying themselves at a press conference on November 15th. However, Disney didn't get a chance to do things the way they wanted. On October 21st, Emily Bavar, a reporter for the Orlando Sentinel, published an article, "Is Our Mystery Industry Disneyland?" Bavar had been covering Disneyland's 10th anniversary and noted that in an interview, Walt had dodged questions about the Central Florida acquisitions, yet he knew a suspicious amount about the area. The secret was out, and Disney accelerated their plans, with Florida Governor William Hayden Burns announcing the project on October 25th. The development of the project continued, as did the public relations, trying to convince both the public and politicians about the project. In June of 1966, Marvin Davis was tasked with creating the master plan for the property, laying out how the theme park, resort areas, and the City of Tomorrow, now known as Epcot, would fit into the 12-mile-long, 7-mile-wide property. These plans can be seen in the most famous of these PR pushes, known as the Epcot film, as Walt walks around the Florida Project room. 2 versions of this film were created, one for the general public and one for the Florida legislature. Sadly, this film would be Walt's last appearance on camera, as he was diagnosed with lung cancer that November and died at St. Joseph Hospital December 15, 1966. Reportedly, he was still working on his Florida project while on his deathbed. The Epcot film screened on February 2, 1967 in Winter Park as part of a press conference and press event to promote the project. If it was a spy mission to buy the land, it was a military one to build it. 2 of the principals were Admiral Joe Fowler, who had helped build Disneyland, and General William Joe Potter, former governor of the Panama Canal I and the number 2 construction man for the 1964 New York World's Fair. While land clearing began as early as '65, it was May 30th, 1967, when the large-scale reclamation project on the property really began. This first step was the infrastructure. Roads were built to get equipment in, 55 miles of canals and levees were dug, and 7 million cubic yards of dirt were moved to create the Seven Seas Lagoon and prop up the site of the Magic Kingdom. This land would allow for most of the original Magic Kingdom layout to be built on the second floor, with access corridors known as utilidors down below. These would house a lot of the behind-the-scenes facilities and allow cast to travel outside the view of guests. Of course, this was a highly unique construction project, and it faced unique challenges. In addition to the 2 original hotels, the Polynesian Village Resort and the Contemporary Resort, 3 other hotels were planned around the Seven Seas Lagoon area: the Asian Resort, the Venetian Resort, and the Persian Resort. Of these, only the land for the Asian Resort was prepared and would later be home to Disney's Grand Floridian Resort and Spa. Both the Polynesian and the Contemporary originally were 12-story towers, but the Polynesian design changed before work began on the hotels in 1969. Disney contracted U.S. Steel to build the hotels using a unique form of modular construction. The rooms could be slid in and out of place for modification later, so the rooms could be built off-site for greater speed and construction. The factory sat near where Port Orleans currently sits and could produce as many as 15 rooms a day. Disney would own the land, and U.S. Steel would own and run the buildings, though there are some sources that say Marriott and Western International were to handle the operations. At this time, Disney had never run a hotel, since the Rather Corporation ran the Disneyland Hotel. However, U.S. Steel fell behind and over budget. Each modular room cost was almost 5 times what was expected, so Disney bought out U.S. Steel for $50 million, which was reportedly what U.S. Steel originally paid Disney for the rights to build and run the hotels. There are different stories about the specifics of the deal termination. Some report that it was before construction ended and Disney finished construction themselves. Others say the termination was in December of 1971. It's hard to tell what the real story is at this point, but we know that some of the finishing work was done by Disney employees working until and through the last minute of September 30th, 1971, as the Contemporary opened unfinished. Of course, the rest of construction had its issues too. Actual construction began in April 1969. Originally thought to cost $100 million, the budget had already reached $400 million at that point, and there were still constant delays. Even before vertical construction began, Disney was met with strikes by the International Union of Operating Engineers, starting almost as soon as the land clearing began, with things becoming violent before the dispute was settled on February 16th of '68. Disney originally hired J.B. Allen as the contractor, as he had done extensive construction at Disneyland, but after saying he couldn't make the October 1st, 1971 opening date, he was fired and replaced with the company's own engineer, Peter Markham, and Buena Vista Construction was formed. The iconic monorail line also had to be constructed. 2 concentric lines and a spur to the maintenance and storage barn were built, totaling 6 miles of track. The beams themselves were constructed as individual spans, each 25 inches wide, up to 4 feet thick, and between 90 and 110 feet long. They were cast off-site in Oregon and shipped to Florida for installation. 4 of the original 10 Mark IV monorails built by Martin Marietta were ready for October 1st, 1971. Monorail's orange, delivered April 5th, green, delivered May 20th, and gold, delivered June 15th, were the first trains to enter service on September 1st of 71. Monorail blue was the fourth train to enter service on September 20th. Disney held another 4-day event in Orlando to showcase a more finalized plan than the Epcot film on April 30th of 69. Here, models and a 17-minute film were shown to the public. Corporate involvement and sponsors were announced. And most importantly, this is when the name was officially changed to Walt Disney World. A lot of this was later seen at the Walt Disney World Preview Center, which opened on January 16, 1970, and would close on September 30, 1971. Over 800,000 visitors passed through the center. The building still exists on Hotel Plaza Boulevard as the Amateur Athletic Union headquarters. This time period also saw Disney's first conservation area when in 1970 the company set aside 7,500 acres of the property to preserve. The opening date had been set in stone and was approaching quickly. Decisions had to be made as to what was going to open on day one and what would open soon thereafter, such as Fort Wilderness. One way or another, the resorts in the Magic Kingdom would be ready to go, even if Disney had to have non-construction workers laying sod in front of the Contemporary on the 30th of September. Thus, the pre-opening phase ended in a mad rush. The vacation kingdom of the world would officially rise from the swamps of Central Florida on Friday, October 1st, 1971. Are you enjoying your jump from time to time with us? Well, please hit that like button and subscribe to support this show and others. You can also join the WDWNT Interglobe Society for exclusive content at patreon.com/WDWNT. If you're looking for the perfect gear to celebrate 50 years of Walt Disney World, you can shop for apparel, accessories, and more at carouselofproducts.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you real soon.